Burnley is a market town in Lancashire, United Kingdom, surrounded by the stunning Pennine countryside. It has a rich heritage and plenty to do. The gorgeous landscape provides the perfect backdrop for hikes, cycling, horse riding, and much more. One of the people who called this place home was 33-year-old Katie Kenyon. She was a caring and loving woman, completely devoted to her 2 children, a son and a daughter whom she adored. She loved animals and was close to her family, always making time for other people. It was on the 22nd of April, 2022 that the spelling of one word in a text message would set alarm bells ringing for her family. That day at 12:18 p.m., Katie's daughter received a message from her. "I love you and I'm sorry. Ring your dad. He will be looking after you for a while from today. I need to get help so I can be a better person for you and your brother. Please know I love you and I'm not upset with you. Sorry I couldn't tell you about it. If your dad won't look after you, Andy will always have your back. Remember, ring your dad or Andy." One thing in the text message stood out immediately. The spelling of the word, while, was missing the H. Katie never spelt it this way. Another message was sent to her son saying, "Hey dude, I love you and I'm sorry. You need to ring your dad. He will be looking after you from today. I need to get help. It's not you. I love you. Will you look after your sister and know, Andy will always have your back. Get your dad to come and get you while I'm gone. If he won't look after you, get him to take you to Andy." Again, the word while was incorrect. Katie's mother Dawn also received a text message from her at 1:42 p.m. It said, "This is the bravest thing I've ever had to do. I need to find some peace and sort my mind out. So with the 6K Andy gave me to pay the debt off, I'm being free for a while until I figure all this shit out." Just like the other 2 messages, the word while was missing the letter H. A text message had also been sent to Andrew Burfield, who was Andy in the text messages to her children. It said, "I want you to know I'm truly sorry for everything." Andrew Burfield and Katie Kenyon had an on-off relationship for several years. Dawn, Katie's mother, sent a message to her sister saying, "Katie's walked out on the kids." This was completely out of character for Katie. She was an utterly devoted mother and her family knew she would never go away and leave her children behind. At 5 p.m., Dawn contacted Sarah and Jenny, Katie's sisters. Jenny got in touch with Andrew to see if he knew where she was. He said he had no idea. He told Jenny he was at work that day and she had gone to his house to drop her card and keys through the letterbox before going to a clinic to get treatment for her anxiety. What he was saying didn't add up, so Sarah and her boyfriend Anthony went to Andrew's house. Andrew lived on Todmorden Road and when the pair arrived to talk to him, they saw her white Ford Fiesta parked outside his house, which still had her belongings inside. But Katie was nowhere to be seen. Andrew was not cooperative with Sarah and Anthony and he ended up calling 999. He told the operator. The police soon arrived on scene and Sarah and Anthony spoke with them. They explained that Katie was missing and that all these messages had come through from her phone. A missing persons investigation was immediately launched. The search started at Andrew Burfield's home. He was cooperative with the police and gave them ideas as to where she could be, including this clinic she had allegedly gone to. He showed the officers the message she had sent him and let them look around his home. He got the ladders from his Ford Transit van so they could check the attic and joked, "Do you want to look in my van too?" He had also sent her several voice notes asking her to ring him. And he had also sent a message to Katie's son on Instagram. He said to her son that Katie had decided to go away for a while and asked him to care for her dog, with the dog's name, Indy, being spelt incorrectly. As news of her disappearance began to spread, missing posters were circulated with a description of her. She had last been seen wearing black leggings, flip-flops, a white and blue top, and a blue cardigan. One thing that was deeply concerning was that her phone had been permanently disconnected. 60 specialist officers from 4 police forces were involved and searches were carried out to try and find her. The hunt involved police and fire service officers, dog teams, mounted police, mountain rescue volunteers, and drones. The task before them was huge. The area to search was vast and dense, including a forest that made up nearly 5 square miles. Her sister Sarah wrote on Facebook, "It is now a waiting game. We have done everything we can, searched everywhere and contacted everyone. Then a witness came forward. Police said that a woman who matched Katie's description was seen getting into a silver Ford Transit van, accompanied by a male, and they issued an appeal for anyone who had seen anything similar to come forward. The following day, Saturday the 23rd, Katie's sister Jenny sent Andrew a message. "Andy, I think you know a hell of a lot more than you're letting on. I have read over the messages Katie sent to her kids, and she doesn't even spell like that or speak like that, which is what the kids have also said. Katie knows how to spell and mentioned about you having dyslexia, which makes sense with the spelling. You sent them texts. You know where Katie is. The police will trace where she was from the last message sent. Doesn't add up how she would drop her car, her keys, her bank card at yours, but no phone and none of her other bank cards. It's about time you came forward and started telling some truth now." Andrew replied, "I know you're worried and upset, but you really can't be throwing accusations at me like that. I had all that last night with Anthony and Sarah. I thought we might work together on this. That's why I gave you my number. I reported her missing last night as I said I would. I gave the police all Katie's things she posted. This is worrying enough without you adding to it. The police searched my house last night, so I think we should leave it down to them now." Jenny replied, "Still doesn't make any sense, Andy. Yeah, we'll leave it there and hopefully CCTV will give us answers." And sure enough, the CCTV did start to provide some. Cameras had shown her arriving on Todmorden Road and getting into his van. They were then seen at a McDonald's drive-thru. As the van drove along the A670, a camera showed the pair sitting in the front seat. This was the last confirmed sighting of Katie Kenyon. Mobile phone data showed that her phone had pinged off several towers, heading towards the Forest of Boland. It also showed the phone traveling back, but a camera showed there was now only one person in the van, Andrew Burfield. That day at 3:45 p.m., the police headed back to Todmorden Road and Burfield showed them the messages on his phone. When the police returned at 5:30 p.m., the SIM card had been removed and put into another phone. He had also lit a fire, which was unusual given that it wasn't that cold. Andrew Burfield was subsequently arrested on suspicion of kidnap. He was taken to Greenbank Police Station and the first of 4 interviews began. But who exactly was Andrew Burfield? He was 50 years old and a father of 2, and worked as a handyman in Burnley and would work on different properties. Burfield was described as isolated and friendless. He had also had run-ins with the law. He had been jailed in 2001 for attempting to pervert the course of justice. He had also been accused of stealing his boss's car and selling it for £2,700, but was cleared. Throughout their relationship, Katie had looked to him for support and love, but he was manipulative and controlling. He would gaslight her and pretend to help her, telling her she needed to go to therapy to deal with her anxiety. He would often toy with Katie's mental health and tell her that she was mentally unwell. The pair would text back and forth and he would tell her she needed to go to rehab and that he would pay for it. Her anxiety was made worse when in 2021, her Ford Fiesta had been vandalized and her tires slashed, but it wasn't reported to the police. On the 18th of February, she had received a high court writ ordering that she pay £4,000 to Andrew Burfield, money that he said she owed him. The fees continued to escalate and by April she owed £6,000. She was terrified that she would lose her home and that debt collectors would start taking her possessions from her. Burfield told her he would pay it and stop any bailiffs from bothering her. But as the deadline for payment grew closer, the money was yet to materialize. She had messaged her mother Dawn and told her she feared for her life. She said, "I'm paranoid to death he's going to do something. Couldn't sleep all night." Andrew Burfield told her how much he loved her, but would then say she had overreacted about the money he said she owed, and he contacted debt collectors without telling her. In one message, he told her to take 2 weeks off work and go to a clinic for mental health treatment, adding, despite Burfield's proclamations that he loved her, he was also secretly seeing another woman. She had told him how sick she was with anxiety and how paranoid and nervous she felt. He told her everything would be fine and sorted out on the 22nd of April. Detective Chief Inspector Al Davies said, "While we have arrested someone in connection with our investigation, I'm very much keeping an open mind as to what has happened, and I have a team of officers and staff working hard to try and find Katie and return her to her family. When investigators looked into Burfield's phone, they found several pieces of evidence. His iPhone had last been backed up to the iCloud on the 4th of April as he had run out of storage. In his Notes app, a series of drafted messages were found. The messages were him pretending to be Katie, and they were addressed to her children, mother, and him. They were almost word for word what had been sent on the 22nd of April, but had not been drafted any later than the 4th. When they looked at his movements the day before she had last been seen, another sinister discovery was made. He had gone out to the forest where his phone had been switched off for 90 minutes. He told the officers he had gone there to find a good spot, as he wanted to take Katie for a picnic the next day. The officers discovered that day he had also borrowed a spade from his parents. Then another witness came forward. The homeowner of a property on Hillingdon Road that Burfield had worked at on Saturday, the 23rd, said that Burfield had asked what day the bins would be emptied. This immediately stood out as strange. When the officers went to check, they found plastic bags with blood on them and Katie's bloodied flip-flops. The spade he had borrowed was also there. In an interview with police on the 25th, he said that their reason for going to the forest was because Katie would write down her problems and then burn the paper. So this was what they were going to do. He said he had gone to the forest on the 21st, but because it was late and dark, he couldn't find a good spot. As the days passed with still no sign of or word from Katie, hope began to fade. The police started to conduct their inquiry as a murder investigation. Lancashire police said, "Whilst Katie has not yet been found, we are now working on the basis that she is sadly no longer alive." The police conducted another interview with Andrew Burfield on the 27th of April, and it was then that his story suddenly changed. He said that after going to what he called their place in the forest and setting up their spot, there was an axe on top of the cooler. He said that Katie had bet him he couldn't hit her can of drink with the axe. He said he had thrown the axe at a tree, using both arms to throw it overhead. But at the same time, Katie was starting to sit down. He stated that he threw it down instead of up and shouted at Katie, but it was too late, and she was struck once in the head with the back of the axe. He described being covered in blood as she lay in his arms, saying it was like something out of a film. He said he was unable to get her body into his van, so he decided to dig a 1.5-foot grave and bury her, covering her body with leaves and sticks, adding he didn't want her to be seen or for animals to find her. He tied a bag to a tree to mark the spot where she was buried. He hadn't planned it, he said, and he was going to go back to his house, deal with his children and her children, and then take his own life. He told the officers that he had burned her cards and phone before dumping the ashes in a bin outside a shop. The picnic box was found in his van, and investigators were also able to find a spot of blood inside Andrew Burfield's washing machine. Following this, he was charged with murder. On Friday, the 29th of April, DCI Al Davies told Katie's family the devastating news. Her sister Sarah said, "We simply could not face telling her children. DCI Davies had to do that for us. I cannot describe to anyone what that was like. It had been the longest 7 days of our lives." With this new information, a specialist search team was sent out to find her. They were able to find the bag tied to the tree, but they could not find any sign of a grave or burial site. As they couldn't find her body, police took the rare decision to have Burfield show them himself. He said he would take the officers to her, all of which was captured on a police body cam. He was dressed in a forensic suit and handcuffed as he escorted the officers to the deposition site. He led them 69 meters off the main track and knelt down on the spot. It was just meters from where they had already been digging. It was here that the search for Katie Kenyon came to a devastating end. DCI Al Davies said, "Notwithstanding Burfield has a skill base as a builder, this was a complex grave. Each layer of soil was taken off in order. The topsoil, then the next, and put back in that same order. A large root ran through the grave, and it had not been severed. An archaeologist and a forensic botanist said it was completely implausible to dig that grave within the timescale Burfield was known to have been in the forest with Katie. It was impeccably finished. Despite his story that she had only been hit once with the back of the axe, the postmortem revealed that Katie had actually been hit 12 times. Her phone has also never been recovered. Katie's funeral service was held in May. Mourners followed the horse-drawn carriage carrying her coffin as her family and loved ones prepared to say goodbye. Her family said that she had been taken away from her children and family far too soon, and that they felt stuck in a heartbreaking nightmare. Her sister Jenny said, "We will love you forever and always, my beautiful big sister." When his trial began at Preston Crown Court on the 14th of November 2022, it was expected to last roughly 3 weeks. He entered a plea of not guilty. The prosecution laid out their case saying, Dr. Jamie Robinson, a home office pathologist who will give evidence next week, estimated there were at least 12 separate strikes to the head. It is the prosecution's case that Andrew Burfield inflicted those blows. The court heard that on the 21st of April, Katie was captured on CCTV kissing and hugging Andrew outside his home. That afternoon, Burfield traveled to his parents' home and took a spade, and that evening his van was seen traveling out towards the forest. He then sent a message to a woman he had been seeing saying that he was proper knackered. As the next day came around, in the morning the pair had messaged back and forth, and Katie had sent Andrew a message saying that she was ready and excited for a new chapter. He told Katie he was going to drive her to a unit for therapy where she could get some help. Phone data was able to show that Burfield had not taken his phone with him that day. At 9:07 a.m., Katie made her last phone call. Between 10:24 and 11:15 that morning, her phone didn't connect with the O2 network. The prosecution argued that it was during this time that Katie was murdered. At 12:34, Burfield sent a message to the other woman he had been seeing, saying that something had come up involving the children and he wouldn't be able to make their date as planned. He then set about covering his tracks by messaging himself, her children, and her mother, pretending to be her. Sarah said, "When the messages were received that afternoon, we knew immediately that something was not right. Katie would never have left her children like that, and there was all sorts going through our heads. We went out looking for her almost straight away, and we sensed then that Burfield was behind it." On the third day of his trial, Andrew Burfield dramatically changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to the murder of Katie Kenyon. Sarah addressed the court with a victim impact statement. "Katie's murder has had an indescribable effect on our family emotionally, and things will never be the same again. I cannot put it into words. Every Christmas, birthday, holiday, and other significant date event will be scarred by Katie's absence and the reasons behind her absence." Andrew Burfield was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 32 years. Mr. Justice Goose told him, "You planned this as early as April 4th when you wrote notes on your phone to her children. You encouraged her to look forward to her new start, and she believed you." He said that what Andrew Burfield had done to Katie was a ferocious and cruel attack, adding that his guilty plea was not due to remorse, but rather because his plan to cover his tracks had failed. Later that month, his sentence was referred to the Attorney General, after a request to review it for being unduly lenient was made. His sentence was upheld, and it was determined it was not unduly lenient. DCI Davies called it one of the most complex investigations he had ever worked on. "This investigation is something that will remain with me forever. Katie was in the prime of her life, and she should still be here now. Her children should be waking up to their mom every morning. Andrew Burfield has completely taken all that away," he said. "Katie Kenyon was a loving, devoted mother of 2. She had the rest of her life in front of her. Her loss has left a void that will never be filled." Her sister Sarah said, "Not only has Burfield taken Katie from us, he has taken our lives too. Her children have lost their mom in the most horrific way. She was mom, dad, and best friend all in one. Katie was a fantastic mom. Our mom Dawn has had to become a mother to 2 grieving teenagers. But to do this while grieving the loss of your daughter is so difficult. Katie told us she wanted to stop Burfield from being able to do to other women what he did to her. This cost her her life." On the morning of October 5, 2012, the weather in Westminster, Colorado was a mix of snow and clouds. This was the day that 10-year-old Jessica Ridgway, who lived with her mother Sarah Ridgway, her aunt, and her grandmother, went missing. Jessica was a 5th grade student at Witt Elementary, but on that particular morning, she was running late and missed walking to school with her friends. Instead, she decided to take a short walk to school on her own, but she never arrived. Question remained. What happened to Jessica? Did she get lost in the snow, or was there a more disturbing reason behind her disappearance? Westminster, located in both Adams and Jefferson counties, is a city in Colorado. As of 2020, it had a population of approximately 116,000, making it the 8th largest city in the state. The city is home to prominent companies such as the Western Fuels Association, Ball, and Digital Globe. Westminster also boasts dedicated land areas for recreational activities, including Stanley Lake Regional Park, Westminster Hills, and numerous neighborhood parks, community parks, and golf courses. In terms of crime, Westminster is considered a relatively safe community, with a crime rate of 3.96 per thousand residents for violent crimes and 45 for property crimes. This is the city where Jessica Ridgway lived. Born on January 23, 2002, in Westminster, Colorado. Jessica was the daughter of Sarah Ridgway and Jeremiah Bryant. Due to her parents' separation, she found herself caught in a custody battle that involved both Colorado and Missouri. Despite these challenges, Jessica remained grounded in her routines and her Colorado home, where she lived with her mother, grandmother, and aunt. Her favorite color was purple, and her distinctive purple-rimmed glasses symbolize her love for the color. As Jessica grew older, she displayed an unexpected level of responsibility, taking care of her dog and fulfilling her chores without reminders. She had a deep bond with her dog, even capturing their moments together in home videos as she attempted to teach her tricks. Her independence and maturity often made her seem older than her actual age of 10 years old. Jessica demonstrated exceptional academic abilities and had a particular passion for mathematics, which her teachers recognized. In addition to her academic achievements, she actively participated in the Pee Wee cheerleading squad. The squad occasionally practiced at Stanley High School, which was conveniently located nearby. Jessica possessed a natural talent for brightening the lives of those around her, often seen with her infectious smile that revealed a charming little gap between her front teeth. However, fate had different plans for her. On October 5, 2012, Jessica's day began like any other. She followed her usual morning routine, enjoying a granola bar and some TV time despite the snowy weather. Earlier that morning, she had arranged to walk to school with her friend, so she called her friend's dad. Jessica's mother, Sarah, had just finished her night shift and returned home at 7:30 a.m. to assist her daughter in getting ready for school. Due to the snowy conditions, Jessica dressed in blue jeans, a black jacket with pink lining, and black boots adorned with small fluffy palms. She also wore her distinctive purple prescription eyeglasses and carried a black and pink backpack featuring a character from the popular show Victorious on Disney Channel. Jessica headed towards Chelsea Park to meet her friends for their usual walk to school. Unfortunately, she arrived late, and her friend's father had already driven her friend to school because they were running behind schedule, waiting for Jessica. Despite being familiar with the route and feeling secure in her neighborhood, Jessica decided to walk to school alone. Little did she know what awaited her. When roll call was taken at school that day, Jessica Ridgway was noticeably absent. Concerned, her 5th grade teacher contacted Jessica's mother, Sarah Ridgway, to inform her of the situation. Unfortunately, Sarah missed the call as she was still asleep after her late night shift. It wasn't until Sarah woke up at 4:00 p.m. that she realized Jessica had not returned home. After checking her voicemails, she was concerned to discover a call from the police at 10:00 a.m., informing her that Jessica hadn't made it to school. It seemed that Jessica's teacher had contacted the police after being unable to reach Jessica's mother. Sarah sensed that something was amiss as Jessica never skipped school. Alarmed, Sarah immediately called the police back to report Jessica as missing. Restless and worried, she hurried to a neighbor's house to inquire if they had seen Jessica. Subsequently, she went to the school in search of her daughter. The sinking feeling in Sarah's gut grew stronger as she feared that Jessica might be in danger, but she could determine whether it was an accident or something more sinister. She tirelessly searched the area that night, but Jessica was nowhere to be found. The following day, October 6th, a massive search operation was launched involving teams of police officers, concerned family members, and community volunteers. They meticulously combed through every inch of Jessica's usual fifth-of-a-mile route to school, leaving no stone unturned. Search dogs and thermal sensors were deployed to cover the surrounding areas of her neighborhood and the paths she typically took. Regrettably, the search yielded no results, leading to the issuance of an Amber Alert featuring Jessica's photo and description. Descriptive missing posters were circulated, outlining Jessica's features. In an effort to engage the public in the search, both the police and the community adorned the school and Jessica's route with purple ribbons. Jessica's disappearance sent shockwaves through the small and modest community, which was home to 13,000 residents. The incident prompted parents to become more vigilant, closely monitoring their children's whereabouts and actively seeking potential suspects within their community. 2 days later, on October 7th, Jessica's backpack was discovered in Superior, 6 miles away from her home. The bag contained various items belonging to Jessica, including her glasses, boots, clothes soaked in urine, and a water bottle labeled "Life is Good." The individual who found the backpack noticed Jessica Ridgway's name on the bottle and decided to post about the missing bag online, hoping to reunite the items with their owner. However, they were unaware that Jessica was missing and the connection to the ongoing Amber Alert. Fortunately, someone online made the connection and promptly alerted the police. The police swiftly took action, recovering the bag and conducting DNA and fingerprint tests. The DNA from the backpack matched that of a suspect involved in a previous assault and abduction attempt. Although this suspect was not in the police database, leading to an ongoing search, the police collected numerous DNA samples from various communities for cross-checking, a meticulous and time-consuming process. While the discovery of the backpack hinted that Jessica might still be with her kidnapper, it raised concerns as she required her glasses for vision. The search efforts shifted towards Superior, where her backpack was found, in the hopes of obtaining a lead on Jessica's whereabouts. On October 10th, officers focused their attention on Marvada, which was approximately 9 miles from Jessica's home. It was there that partial human remains were discovered in an abandoned mine shack in Patriots Park. By a member of the search party, the area was thoroughly examined by the police in search of additional evidence. The scene was truly horrifying as officers came across a child-sized torso without limbs or a head. DNA testing confirmed the identity of the remains as Jessica's, devastating her family. The medical examiner noted disturbing details, such as the body being cleaned, organs removed, and a foreign object found inside. Near the crime scene, detectives also discover a small wooden cross necklace. The search for Jessica Ridgway now transitioned from a rescue mission to a murder investigation. During this time, suspicions lingered around Jessica's mother Sarah, as she was the last person to have seen Jessica alive. Even Jessica's father, Brian, expressed his concerns when questioned about Sarah's potential involvement. In response to these suspicions, Sarah released a public statement that lasted for 38 minutes. During the statement, she emphasized her complete cooperation with the police investigation and aimed to dispel any doubts regarding her involvement in Jessica's disappearance. With no clear leads and after ruling out Jessica's immediate family as suspects, the authorities found themselves grappling with the fear that the child killer resided within their close-knit community. Nearly 2 weeks after Jessica's disappearance, a breakthrough occurred when a woman contacted the police tip line. She recognized the cross necklace from media coverage of the murder and stated that it closely resembled one owned by her neighbor. 17-year-old Austin Reed Sig was born on January 17, 1995, in Westminster, Colorado. His parents, Mindy and Robert, separated when Austin was just a few years old. Following the separation, Austin lived with his mother while his father, Robert, resided in a nearby mansion after remarrying. During his upbringing, Austin faced academic struggles, particularly in reading and writing. Teachers noticed his difficulty concentrating in school, which prompted suggestions for an evaluation to determine if he had a potential learning disability. Pediatricians also suggested that he may have attention deficit disorder. Austin attended Maranatha Christian Center and Witt Elementary School during his early education. Despite his academic challenges, he maintained a social life described by classmates as both intelligent and slightly peculiar. Austin participated in the Jeffco concert choir and had interests in World of Warcraft, Call of Duty, as well as a small collection of decorative swords and knives. However, what truly set him apart was his open fascination with death, which made him appear peculiar and intriguing to some. In 2008, Austin's mother Mindy discovered child pornography on his computer, marking the beginning of a troubled relationship with graphic and violent content. As a result, Austin was taken to a faith-based center for counseling from 2008 to 2009. Unfortunately, this intervention did not lead to any significant improvement. After the initial counseling, his problems actually worsened over time. Surprisingly, he never sought help again. The counselors had advised his father to monitor what Austin was watching on TV and doing on the computer, but unfortunately, there was little follow-through in actually tracking the content he consumed. Austin's father, Robert, had a troubling history of criminal activities, including burglary, fraud, domestic violence, and driving under the influence. However, there were no known charges related to child abuse. Nevertheless, there were restraining orders against him from his ex-wife due to his problematic relationships. Despite the early conflicts between his parents, the rest of Austin's home life appeared to be calm and nurturing. He shared a room with his younger brother, and his side of the space was adorned with Japanese decorations, katanas, a kimono, and an Abbey Road Beatles poster. Despite his diverse interests, Austin seemed to maintain a normal social life, even having a girlfriend whom he met at a Christian teen gathering called the Warehouse 180. Their relationship lasted from middle school through high school without any concerning signs. According to his mother, he spent an average of 3 nights a week at home. However, where he stayed on the other nights remained a mystery. Austin's interest expanded to crime scene forensics and mortuary science. His fascination with death became a significant driving force and earned him recognition in a high school forensics competition. Austin displayed exceptional talent in crime scene investigation. Securing his second-place award, he pursued his passion at Warrant Tech, where he received accolades for his crime scene investigation skills. Astonishingly, his dedication to morbid subjects extended to Arapahoe Community College, where he took classes that allegedly taught him how to commit murder and evade capture. In May 2012, at the age of 17, Austin made his first attempt at a serious crime. He tried to incapacitate a 22-year-old female jogger at a park in Westminster near Kettner Lake using homemade chloroform. Fortunately, she fought back and successfully escaped his attack. The jogger promptly reported the incident to the police, providing a detailed description of her assailant as a white male aged between 20 and 25, approximately 5 feet 7 inches tall, with an average build and brown hair. In order to gather evidence, a DNA sample was collected from the jogger's shirt and entered into the FBI CODIS database, which serves as a repository for DNA profiles. Following this failed assault, Austin embarked on a family vacation to the U.S. Virgin Islands, where there is no indication that he committed any crimes. Interestingly, there were no observable abnormal behaviors exhibited by Austin subsequent to the attack. And his distorted mindset, Austin concluded that he needed a smaller and more vulnerable victim. The neighbor who alerted the police about Austin also expressed concerns about his behavior. Hacking on this information, the police brought Austin in for questioning and obtained a DNA sample before releasing him. Amidst this chaotic situation, Mindy Sigg found herself faced with an incredibly difficult decision. She harbored suspicions that her son, Austin, may be somehow connected to Jessica's disappearance. The Sigg family resided near the Ridgeway home, and Austin had previously attended the same elementary school as Jessica. A few days later, on October 23, 2012, Mindy Sigg made an urgent call to the police, requesting their immediate presence. Clearly distressed and struggling to maintain her composure, she conveyed, "My son wants to confess to the murder of Jessica Ridgeway." Overwhelmed with emotions, Mindy was having difficulty breathing. She then handed the phone to Austin, who chillingly admitted, "I am responsible for the murder of Jessica Ridgeway. I possess undeniable evidence, leaving no room for doubt. I am surrendering completely without any resistance." The police swiftly responded to the call, rushing to the residence and apprehending Austin. During the subsequent interview, Austin confessed to the murder of Jessica, but denied any involvement in the assault. He claimed that he had gone hunting on that fateful day and had no prior knowledge or acquaintance with Jessica. However, he was well acquainted with the area as he had attended Witt Elementary School himself during his childhood. By deliberately selecting this location, it is likely that he was aware of secluded areas away from potential witnesses. On that fateful day, Austin swiftly seized Jessica while she was walking on the sidewalk, forcefully pulling her into his vehicle and driving away. He admitted that he had planned to murder her from the beginning, but assured her that she would be safe and reunited with her mother as long as she remained calm. Austin restrained her hands and feet using plastic ties, driving around for approximately 30 minutes before reaching his mother's house. In the garage, he subjected Jessica to horrifying torment, cutting off pieces of her hair while watching television. Jessica was so terrified that she involuntarily urinated. Subsequently, he forced her to change into his clothes due to her soaked attire. The details of Jessica's murder are extremely distressing. Austin initially attempted to strangle her with zip ties, but when unsuccessful, resorted to manual strangulation. Realizing that she was still alive, he drowned her in a bathtub filled with scalding water. The brutality continued as he dismembered her body in the bathroom, utilizing an electric saw, utility knife, and razor blades. Austin meticulously labeled certain body parts and placed them in bags, disposing of her remains in a small pool shed located in his backyard. The following day, he drove around in his Jeep to dispose of Jessica's belongings, strategically placing her backpack and Superior to mislead the police, and discarding her jacket in a random trash can. Fearing detection by cadaver search dogs, Austin felt compelled to dispose of Jessica's torso separately. In a disturbing twist, he indulged in a fantasy by impersonating a medical examiner, removing her organs in his home and washing the body to eliminate any evidence. He claimed to have flushed the organs down the toilet. A search of the house uncovered the remaining body parts and cut hair from Jessica in the crawlspace, which Austin had previously described to the police dispatcher. Austin acknowledged placing a small hand-carved wooden cross pendant on Jessica's body. However, during the autopsy, it was discovered that the cross was found inside her body, which was one of Austin's practices. Austin confessed to etching 3 designs on the cross before inserting it inside her. The police, in their search for public assistance, initially released a photo of the wooden cross without revealing its significance. Austin confirmed these details to the authorities. The wooden cross, measuring 1 inch, was discovered in Jessica's vaginal cavity. Deeply disturbing choice that violated her innocence and resulted in part of her body being discarded in a trash bay. When questioned about his previous attempt to assault a female jogger, admitted that he would have done the same to her as he did to Jessica. His plan involved disposing of the jogger's body in the sulfur pits located in the Colorado mountains. Austin confessed that he had harbored a long-standing sexual fantasy, one that had intensified over time. He admitted to going out before Jessica's abduction and murder to search for young girls, but he never acted on his urges during those instances. Austin confessed to all the charges, resulting in a total of 17 counts, with 11 specifically related to the offenses against Jessica and the earlier attack on the female jogger. Due to his age, he was initially placed in a juvenile facility. However, Austin was a minor when he committed these crimes, was later charged as an adult and transferred to an adult prison in Jefferson County. Considering his age, he spent the first 52 days in jail in a specialized housing unit. During this period, he was isolated from the general prison population and accompanied by a deputy for security purposes. Austin faced a total of 19 charges, including first-degree murder after deliberation, 3 counts of felony murder, sexual assault on a child, second-degree kidnapping and robbery, as well as attempted murder, attempted kidnapping, and attempted sexual assault in relation to the park jogger. On December 10, 2012, the prosecution added counts 18 and 19 for sexual assault and an enhancement for a crime of violence. Surprisingly, Austin initially pleaded not guilty to the 15 charges. However, later in court, 2 of the original 17 charges were dropped as duplicative. It remains unclear whether this police strategy was intentional or part of a larger legal plan. Nevertheless, in October 2013, just before the trial began, Austin changed his plea to guilty. He made this decision to spare both his family and Jessica's family from the gruesome details of the crime. During the trial, psychologist Anna Salter testified during Austin's sentencing hearing. Although she did not formally examine Austin, she assessed him based on observed behaviors and details from the crime and confession tapes. Salter noted signs of a sadistic necrophilia with psychopathic traits, but concluded that he was not truly psychotic. She suggested that Austin only showed remorse when police were closing in, indicating that he may have been remorseful for getting caught rather than for his actions. Salter also highlighted Austin's mode of operation, which involved leaving home 50 minutes late to catch up with elementary school children heading to school. In court, Jessica Ridgway's family members wore purple, Jessica's favorite color, and shared photos of her growing up. Christine Ridgway, Jessica's grandmother, expressed a profound impact on the family, stating, "This monster took away from me the light of my life. It shattered the core of my family. I miss her with every breath." Christine Ridgway continued, mentioning the absence of hugs, kisses, and the feeling of Jessica's little toes digging into hers on the couch. Jessica's mom, Sarah Ridgway, chose not to give Austin the satisfaction of acknowledging the extent of the damage he had done to Jessica's family. Instead, she informed Austin that after leaving the courtroom, she would purposefully forget his name and focus solely on preserving Jessica's legacy. In the eyes of Jessica's family, she will forever be remembered as a 10-year-old. During the court proceedings, Chief Judge Stephen Munsinger read a letter written by Austin before his arrest. The letter expressed Austin's self-perception as a monster, acknowledging the evil nature of his actions. Throughout the trial, Austin maintained a stoic demeanor, only showing some emotion during the victim impact statement, which gave hope that he felt deeper remorse for Jessica. The letter and Austin's behavior painted a chilling picture of his self-awareness as a perpetrator of heinous acts. Despite pleading guilty, the defense made every effort to secure the most lenient sentencing for Austin. They explored various mitigating circumstances in his life, including a troubled upbringing and medical conditions that could potentially reduce his culpability. However, these factors did not fully explain the meticulous planning and execution of the crime. The defense argued that Austin's actions were driven by desire rather than impulsivity, challenging the notion that his disorders entirely dictated his behavior. Despite the defense's efforts, maintained his guilty plea, acknowledging the seriousness of his crimes. Due to a Supreme Court decision in 2005, the death penalty was deemed unconstitutional for individuals under 18, sparing Austin from capital punishment. On November 19, 2013, he was sentenced to life in prison with an additional 86 years. After completing a minimum of 40 years of his life sentence, the 86-year sentence would then begin. In 2014, Austin was transferred to a different prison outside of Colorado, and the specific location was not disclosed to the public. This transfer was made to ensure Austin's safety, and the details of his new prison were kept confidential. 1 year after Jessica's tragic death, a park was constructed near the site of her abduction and dedicated in her honor. It was named the Jessica Ridgway Memorial Park. The structures within the park were painted purple, representing Jessica's favorite color, and featured dragonflies to symbolize her free spirit. The memorial rock and bench were placed at the location where her remains were discovered, providing a serene space for reflection and remembrance. This thoughtful memorial stands as a lasting tribute to Jessica's memory, offering solace to those who visit and honoring the impact she had on the community. Jessica Ridgway's story serves as a powerful reminder of the ongoing need for conversations about child safety. It highlights the importance of educating children about stranger danger, safe routes to school, and seeking help in emergencies. As for whether justice was served for Jessica Ridgway and whether the sentence Austin received is agreeable, it is a matter of personal opinion. 47-year-old Peter Wilkinson and his wife, 50-year-old Tracy, lived in Starbridge in the English County of the West Midlands. The pair shared 2 children, a daughter Lydia, who was studying biology at Bristol University, and a son, Pierce, who was 13 years old. Even though she was away at university, the pair spoke most days, and they shared a very special bond. Tracy Wilkinson was a generous and compassionate woman. A former British Latin American ballroom dancing champion, she volunteered to work with the elderly and could talk to anybody and make them feel at ease. If she saw a homeless person on the street, she would often go home and get them food, refusing to turn the other way when she saw someone in need. She was a stay-at-home mother and her husband Peter worked as a businessman. Lydia described her little brother as handsome, funny, and clever, saying he was very personable and everybody made friends with him. Could make friends in an empty room, she said. Pierce and Tracy were passionate about films and loved nothing more than watching them together, especially the Carry On films. The family were huge dog lovers and adopted a greyhound called Mandy from a local trust. In March 2016, Tracy went to the supermarket to do her weekly shop. As she was coming out, she noticed a 23-year-old man called Aaron Barley sleeping in a cardboard box outside. Seeing him struggling and cold moved her greatly, and in that moment she knew she wanted to help him. She decided to take him back to their house on Greyhound Lane, and he had dinner with them. Tracy was keen to get him back on his feet and would offer him support in any way she could. She drove him to the council offices, and with their help he was able to find new accommodation in a hostel. Every day Tracy would make sure he had breakfast and dinner, also ensuring he had a hot meal every day. This stability and support was something he hadn't experienced much of, as Aaron Barley's life had been troubled and chaotic from the get-go. He had been born in 1993 out of an incestuous relationship between an uncle and niece, who shared a 19-year age gap. His mother worked in a factory and his father was a publican. His family was both disjointed and large. By the age of 6, he had been orphaned. His father had succumbed to cancer when he was just 4, and 2 years later, his mother suffered a fatal heart attack. He would spend his childhood in care, various foster homes, and with different family members. He had suffered physical and sexual abuse too. When he was 13 years old, he was at the center of a missing persons investigation, and his image was circulated after he went missing with 2 of the boys in Bronze Grove. He was later found and returned to the care system. As he aged out of the system, he began sleeping on the street. He abused various substances and struggled with an alcohol addiction too. But now it looked like his life was finally starting to turn around. He appeared grateful for the help and support he had been given, and the Wilkinsons were determined to get him back on his feet. One night, whilst having dinner with the family, said to them, "Just need somebody to give me a chance. I need somebody to give me a lucky break." Tracy had battled an alcohol addiction and volunteered at the rehab center that had helped her. She knew all too well just how debilitating addiction could be, and she wanted to do everything she could to help him. Peter decided to give him a job as a laborer in one of his businesses in Newport. For the next 5 months, it seemed to be working out well. Aaron had a stable income, a roof over his head, and a family that really cared for him, but it would soon fall apart. In September, Aaron said that he had relapsed and was taking drugs again, as his mother had recently died, something that was not true. As he was no longer sober and hadn't been turning up to work, and had also been showing aggressive behavior towards managers, Peter decided to let him go from his job. It ended amicably and the family lost contact with him. But just a couple of months later, Peter found him sleeping in the family's driveway. He was covered in bruises, and it appeared he had been assaulted. The Wilkinsons decided to help him once more. They found him accommodation, and he earned money by doing odd jobs for them. He spent Christmas Day with the family and gave Tracy a card addressing it to the mother I never had. When the new year rolled around, he had a new flat in Briley Hill and was in full-time employment. He would visit the Wilkinsons a couple of times a week for dinner, and things appeared to be on the up for him. However, his job as a furniture polisher would soon end as he was fired, and he would later lose his accommodation too. The Wilkinson family let him stay in their house on Greyhound Lane for 2 weeks until he found somewhere new to live. On the 26th of March, Lydia came back from university and hid in the family's Land Rover to surprise her mother for Mother's Day. When Tracy opened the boot and Lydia jumped out, they both cried, so happy to be reunited with one another. Lydia wasn't back for long, and within a few days she had gone back to Bristol. Just 4 days after surprising her mother, her world would come crashing down. Thursday, the 30th of March, 2017. At around 10 a.m., Lydia received a call from her boyfriend, saying there had been an incident in Starbridge. When she Googled it, she saw photos of her house taped off and emergency services all over Greyhound Lane. She called the police to find out what was happening, and what they told her was horrifying. At 7 a.m. that morning, Peter had taken their Greyhound Mandy for a walk, just like he always did, and left his wife and son at home. He asked Pierce if he'd wanted to go with him, but Pierce decided not to go and told his dad he would go the following day. When he came back from the walk, Peter thought his wife and son had slept in, as there wasn't a cup of tea on the kitchen counter for him, like there always was for when he returned home. As he opened the back door, a man in a balaclava lunged at him from behind a wall in the kitchen, holding a knife over his head. Peter was stabbed 6 times, twice in the back, twice in the abdomen, and twice in the face. The man said, "Die, you bastard," as he stabbed him. Despite him trying to disguise his identity, Peter knew instantly who it was. Peter said to him, "Aaron, we tried to help you." Aaron Barley repeated, "Die, you bastard," and stabbed him in the stomach. He then stole the Land Rover from the front driveway and drove off. Peter called 999 before staggering out into the garden, where he collapsed onto a chair. Emergency services rushed to the scene, and a paramedic and rapid response vehicle arrived within 7 minutes of the call. 2 ambulances were also dispatched alongside 2 air ambulance helicopters with critical care doctors and paramedics en route to assist too. When the paramedics arrived, Peter asked them to go and check on his wife and son. When the paramedic came out, Peter heard him say, "1 dead, 1 in cardiac arrest." Peter was taken to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham to be treated for his life-threatening injuries. As more emergency services arrived, they were confronted with a dreadful scene inside. Tracy had been stabbed at least 17 times and was found naked on her bedroom floor after being stabbed through her duvet as she lay in bed. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Her son Pierce had at least 8 stab wounds, one of which was so severe it had nearly divided his spinal cord. He was found on his stomach struggling to breathe after he had tried to crawl along the floor. He was taken to Birmingham Children's Hospital, where medical staff tried tirelessly to save him. Tragically, he later succumbed to his injuries and died. Within the course of just a few minutes, Peter had lost his wife and son, and Lydia had lost her mother and little brother. After stealing the car, Barley was captured on dash cams, both inside the stolen vehicle and from other road users, driving the Land Rover away from police. But before long, he crashed. After a brief chase, Aaron Barley was taken into custody. A knife wrapped in a wet shirt was found in the car. For Lydia, who was in Bristol, the nightmare that was unfolding was impossible to comprehend. She had been due to come back home the following day to choose a dress for her university ball. She had promised Piers she would be there at the school gates to meet him. As she was driven to Birmingham to be with her father, she said she began thinking that she would have to plan a triple funeral on her own. When she arrived at the hospital, she was taken to the critical care ward where her father was being treated. Doctors surrounded his bed, and he was hooked up to various machines before going into surgery to try and save his life. West Midlands Police and the West Midlands Ambulance Service gave a statement to the press. As her father was fighting for his life, Lydia was faced with the horrific task of identifying the bodies of her younger brother and mother. She said, "I went in and I just stayed with my mom and brother for a while and said that I was sorry I couldn't protect them, and I stroked their hair. I stayed there because I knew that was going to be the last time I saw them in my life. From that point on, it was a case of I lived every day for Dad." She stayed by Peter's bedside, holding his hand, hoping he would regain consciousness. And eventually he did. Peter would ultimately survive and was in hospital for 11 days, 6 of which were in intensive care. He was then told the news that his beloved wife and son had died. The community of Starbridge was in total shock. Flowers were laid at the house in tribute, with many people coming to pay their respects and try and come to terms with what had happened. Lydia showed enormous bravery and strength by going back to the house to lay flowers for her little brother and mother. The police were now trying to piece together exactly what had happened, and when watching the CCTV footage from the family home, the horrifying truth came to light. It showed Aaron Barley climbing over the garden fence the night before. He hid in the garden shed throughout the night after he had failed to break into the house. As morning broke, he waited for Peter to leave. CCTV then showed him crawling across the garden, being careful to not be seen. He then entered the home, which was unlocked, and pulled a balaclava over his face to conceal his identity. He took 2 knives from the kitchen, and after going upstairs, he stabbed Tracy in her bed and Pierce in his bedroom in a frenzied, violent, and ferocious attack. He then lay in wait for Peter to come back. Aaron Barley's lack of remorse was shocking. He would later say to a police officer, "I've stabbed 3 people up. I ain't bothered about taking one of you with me." When it was unclear as to whether or not Peter was going to survive, he told a prison nurse who had asked him about being homeless, "What? 2 murders and possibly a 3rd. I don't think I'll need any help with that." He also told a police officer, "I chopped them up. I don't need a solicitor." He refused to have a toxicology test done to determine if he was under the influence of any substances. He refused to give any reason for his crime, and his motive remains unknown. He bragged in custody about killing the mother and son, saying he was glad they were dead. The only regret he showed was that he hadn't succeeded in murdering Peter. Less than 1 week before the murders, the Wilkinsons had canceled a phone contract they had paid for Barley, as he had failed to contact them for 3 weeks. Tracy also told friends that she had seen him looking over the fence at her home and that she didn't want anything else to do with him. Aaron Barley had a long history of violence and antisocial behavior. When he was 11 years old, he was removed from a foster home in Worcester following violent attacks on other children in the home. As he grew up, he continued to show increasing violence with a former resident of the care home. He lived in saying he was deeply troubled. He would often get into fights and even stole a member of staff's car. He also wrote a hit list of people he wanted to kill. He had a string of 21 previous convictions, the first of which he got when he was just 12 years old, for grievous bodily harm. Other offenses included assaulting a police officer, drugs charges, possession of a firearm, and assaulting a former partner with a piece of wood. He had hit her 50 times with it, before breaking it in half and trying to stab her with it. For this offense, he was sentenced to 3 years in prison at the age of 18. He attended a school for children with social, emotional, or behavioral needs, and those who knew him described him as cocky, saying he often said disgusting and misogynistic things about people's female friends and relatives. Nobody socialized with him. He had also been reported to the police after his previous foster carer had read several posts on Facebook that had caused great concern. He had threatened his family, who he said hadn't spoken to him in years, and messages also said, "Got to try and get some help before I go on a killing spree." Those who had volunteered at the rehabilitation center stated that Barley had said he wanted to kill someone using a knife. They also reported that he said he had 2 aims in life, one being to kill a prison officer and the other to kill a police officer. However, his comments were not taken seriously with the belief they were caused by his drug abuse. In February 2017, just a month before he committed the murders, he had met with a project worker for additional support. She made the assessment that he was seeking control, being manipulative and playing mind games. And in a text message, he referred to himself as a predator, saying, "Stay a predator, change the prey." On Wednesday, the 7th of June, 2017, Pierce and Tracy's funeral service was held at St. Mary's Church. Pierce and Tracy shared a coffin, with Pierce's godfather saying in his eulogy, "Some of you may be surprised to see just the one coffin, but they are together, inseparable, as they always were in life." Lydia said her brother and mother were as close as a mother and son could be, and shared a true bond of love that could never be broken. Mandy, the family's dog, and other dogs from a rescue center formed a guard of honor as the coffin was taken into the church. The Kidderminster and male voice choir began the service by singing "Can't Help Falling in Love" and ended with Pierce's favorite song, "Hooked on a Feeling." Once again, the courage and bravery of the Wilkinson family was incredible. On the first day of his trial at Birmingham Crown Court, he pled guilty to 2 counts of murder and 1 count of attempted murder. As his former charges were read out to the court, Barley rocked from side to side in the dock before shouting, "I've done what I've done. There's no need to stand here and lie." Psychiatric tests were carried out, and it was determined that nothing could provide a defense on the grounds of diminished responsibility. Kareem Khalil for the prosecution said that Barley was a compulsive liar and manipulator. One of his former foster carers described him as a Jekyll and Hyde character, saying on the one hand he could be sensitive and caring, and on the other hand violent and threatening. A former care home resident said of him, he was the type of kid who, if he saw something upsetting happen to someone, he wouldn't get upset or cry. He would just stand and watch. It was like he was in his body but detached from it. His defense lawyer, Hankin, said that Barley's chaotic childhood had seen him be pushed from pillar to post and around various different foster homes. He said that Barley was suffering from borderline personality disorder, and he had perceived the family had turned their back on him, before adding there was no evidence to actually substantiate this, and that the Wilkinsons had shown extraordinary kindness towards him. The presiding judge, Mrs. Justice Carr, said that what Barley had done was a vicious and unprovoked attack on those who had demonstrated extraordinary kindness and generosity. Lydia Wilkinson addressed the court with a victim impact statement, "Murdered half my family, very nearly all of it. I am a shell of my former self. Sometimes I wake up and don't want to be here. What did they do to deserve this?" She added that she would never forgive Barley for what he had done. He appeared to cry as she spoke and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." The judge praised Lydia for her courage and bravery, saying she had demonstrated a maturity well beyond her years. She emphasized the impact that this had had on Lydia, saying, "She has anxiety attacks and cannot be left alone." Peter also spoke to the court. "There's no motive. There is no explanation. He decided that because his life was going bad ways, he was going to take it out on people that had cared and looked after him. I wish we had never met him. I wish my wife had never set eyes on him." 24-year-old Aaron Barley was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 30 years. The judge had decided against giving him a whole life order, mainly due to how old he was. She told him though he may never be released, and he sat emotionless and didn't react. "You clearly represent a very significant risk of serious harm to members of the public," she said. The Solicitor General Robert Buckland appealed for the sentence to be reviewed for being unduly lenient. Lord Justice Holroyd said that the original trial judge, Mrs. Justice Carr, was entitled to conclude that a whole life order was not to be handed down. He did add that the only mitigating factors were his admission and his psychiatric problems, but that also his mental health issues had not stopped him from planning and committing the crime. 3 judges ruled that due to the most exceptional grave case, his minimum term needed to be increased, and it was increased to 35 years. Aaron Barley will only become eligible for parole once he has served his minimum term, and also is able to prove that he is no longer a danger. Only time will tell if he is ever fit to be released. Lydia said, "In October, there are a lot of people out there who are in some unfortunate situations and need help, and it is an amazing thing to be able to help them." In October, teachers from Pierce's school announced that they were going to run a marathon in his memory. They were going to raise money for the Greyhound Trust, Pierce's favorite charity, which helps to find new homes for greyhounds across the country. His teachers' efforts raised an amazing £3,550. The school was also working with Lydia to commission a commemorative sculpture, working with a local artist. Peter and Lydia moved back to the home on Greyhound Lane, with Peter saying, "It's our home. After taking so much from us, we couldn't possibly have it that he would take anything else. We love the house. It is very much a family home that we had built and renovated ourselves, and we like being there." They had also received much support from their local priest, who was there to bless every room in the home when they moved back in. The house would later be put up for sale in February 2018. Lydia also went back to university to carry on with her studies. She said, "We are determined to not let this take away any more of our life. I'd like to be a researcher to do medical research to continue the help and support that my mom would give to people. By researching things like cancer and Parkinson's disease, I hope to give back to people and continue her legacy." Lydia said that she does not feel hatred for Aaron Barley, and that it was more important to her to channel her energy into building something positive from what had happened. She was able to raise £13,000 for Birmingham Children's Hospital, the hospital that had tried so hard to save her little brother. The loss of Tracy and Pierce is immeasurable, and for those who knew and loved them, the pain is incalculable. Tracy was a generous and compassionate woman who refused to turn away from anyone who needed her help. She and Peter together raised 2 incredibly kind and thoughtful children, who always considered others and wanted to support those in need. Although the void left by their deaths will never be filled, the lasting legacy Pierce and Tracy have created, be it through the children who will be looked after by Birmingham Children's Hospital or the greyhounds who will be cared for and find a new home, will live on for many years to come. A 35-year-old mother of 5 named Crystal Rogers vanished from sight during the 4th of July weekend in 2015, leaving her abandoned car on the Bluegrass Parkway in Bardstown, Kentucky. Sherry and Tommy Ballard, Crystal's parents, were devastated and perplexed. Sherry took care of Crystal's children after her disappearance, and Tommy devoted his time to finding his daughter. Police looked into it as well, but they could not find any information about her whereabouts. 16 months later, tragedy struck once more when her father Tommy was shot and killed on November 19, 2016, while hunting on family land close to Bluegrass Parkway. The unsolved disappearance of Rogers and her father's death had a profound effect on the Kentucky community and attracted a lot of media attention. Despite the extensive coverage, investigators were unable to make headway. After 8 agonizing years, a significant breakthrough occurred this year. This case brings us to Bardstown, Kentucky, a town renowned for its rich history, vibrant community spirit, and local legends, which include the renowned bourbon heritage. It provides a top-notch experience in a small-town environment. Nonetheless, Bardstown is not one of the safest neighborhoods in the nation. Its crime rate is greater than 90% of all Kentucky towns and cities when compared to the state as a whole. The fact that the town has seen 4 unfathomable, unsolved tragedies that have permanently damaged the lives of those who live here is another contributing factor. The first tragedy occurred on Memorial Day weekend of 2013, when Jason Ellis, a 33-year-old Bardstown police officer, was ambushed and killed on the Bluegrass Parkway exit ramp. The second occurred on the day after Easter in 2014, when 48-year-old Kathy Netherland and her 16-year-old daughter, Samantha, were brutally murdered inside their home in Botland, just outside Bardstown. Crystal Rogers' murder was the third in this heinous string of killings. Crystal was born April 4, 1980, in Bardstown, Kentucky. She was Sherry and Tommy Baller's much-loved first child. Growing up in a close-knit family, Crystal's parents loved and looked out for her, being picky about who she spent time with. Crystal had a kind and sympathetic disposition when she was younger, which made people like her. Sherry said that she was incredibly grateful to have Crystal as a daughter, and that she could not have asked for a better kid. Initially, Crystal Rogers was wed to Keith Rogers, and the two of them had 4 children. But as time passed, it was clear that their marriage was under strain. Rather than pursuing a formal divorce, Crystal and Keith made the decision to live apart. It is interesting to note that even as they got older, kept his last name. Later in life, Crystal embraced the joys and responsibilities of motherhood and became a fully committed mother to her children. Crystal started dating Brooks Halk not long after they split up, marking the beginning of a new chapter in her life. This was a long-term relationship that lasted until 2015. In addition to their romantic relationship, Brooks and Crystal had a working relationship. Coming from a wealthy family with ties to Bardstown, Brooks owned and operated several rental homes in the area, actively collaborated with him, juggling her job obligations with her 4 children's needs. Along with Brooks, Crystal welcomed Elijah, also known as Eli, a son, into her family. But Crystal's life, which had been marked by her generosity and love for her mother, was about to take a tragic turn. Her 5 children had been enriched by their mother's enriching presence were left with a permanent void in their hearts after her abrupt disappearance. For Crystal, the beginning of July 3, 2015, was just another typical day spent at her boyfriend Brooks' family farm. She watched her children and passed the time by playing games on her phone. Nobody could have predicted how drastically this seemingly ordinary day would affect everyone's lives. When Brooks awoke the following morning, July 4th, he discovered with dismay that Crystal had vanished. The July 4th was marked by barbecues, fireworks, and other traditional festivities, but Crystal was nowhere to be found throughout the day. A relative discovered Crystal's 2007 Chevrolet Impala parked with a flat tire near mile marker 14 of the Bluegrass Parkway 2 days later, on July 5th. The keys were strangely still in the ignition, and her personal cell phone was discovered inside. It was at this point that Crystal's mother, Sherry Ballard, officially reported her missing. The investigation into Crystal Rogers' disappearance began on July 5, 2015, with Detective John Snow leading the way. Brooks Hawk, Crystal's boyfriend and the father of her youngest child, became the focus of the investigation almost immediately. Brooks claimed that he, Crystal, and their son, Eli, went to the family farm on the night of July 3rd. They returned home and went to bed, but when Brooks awoke the next morning, was gone. He suggested that her habit of leaving in the middle of the night was not uncommon, as she frequently attended parties. However, Crystal's friends and family disputed Brooks' portrayal of her as a frequent partygoer who would abandon her children. Suspicion was aroused by Brooks' uncooperative demeanor during the search. When asked about texts that seemed to show that Crystal was going to spend July 3rd alone without the kids, Brooks said, "I do not know." In the 2 days preceding the car's discovery next to the Bluegrass Parkway, Brooks appeared indifferent and did little to assist, even though Crystal was formally reported missing on July 5th. When Detective Snow interviewed Brooks on July 8th, he was observed downplaying most of the details and projecting a victim image. The interview was cut short when his brother, Nick Hawk, a Bardstown police officer, called. This added a new layer to the investigation. Both brothers were now being investigated by the police. On July 8th, the brothers met at the family farm, Crystal's last known location. Nick was questioned and investigated but refused to cooperate. Nick initially refused to take a polygraph test. When forced to take the test on July 24th, the results raised serious concerns. His answers revealed dishonesty whenever asked about Crystal Rogers or the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. Despite intense search activity, months went by with no new leads. Due to his lack of cooperation, Bardstown Police Chief Rick McCubbin suspended Nick on September 9, 2015. He was fired on the 16th of October. Crystal's whereabouts remain unknown as the investigation stalled. Finally, the case appeared to be mired in uncertainty. Despite suspicions about Brooks and DeKalb, no concrete evidence emerged, and Crystal Rogers remained missing, leaving her family and friends in distress as the case seemed to go nowhere. Tommy and Sherry Ballard had a difficult time dealing with their daughter's disappearance. They took on the role of guardians for 3 of Crystal's 5 children, trying to keep things normal for the kids while simultaneously bringing attention to Crystal's situation. Sherry talked to the media about the situation on a regular basis, but Tommy, her father, adopted a more hands-on style. Tommy actively participated in setting up searches, conducting interviews, and requesting information from the sheriff's office. It appeared as though he was conducting an independent inquiry in addition to the formal search for his daughter. He even thought about running for the sheriff's post when things appeared to be slowing down. His goal was to take charge of the unit looking into this daughter's case, and ideally produce more noticeable outcomes. Soon after Crystal vanished, the Ballard family suspected Brooks and his brother of being involved in a foul play. They publicly implied Brooks' guilt earlier, casting doubt on the veracity of his relationship with Crystal. Tommy and Sherry intensified their legal actions against Brooks in the second half of 2015. They were worried that Brooks would try to leave the area with Eli, who was selling real estate quickly and at an unusually low price. To stop him from leaving, the Ballards took legal action. Aside from this court case, Tommy continued to look for his daughter. He seemed to get a little paranoid in the process. Especially in 2016, he turned into a fervent safety advocate, pushing family members to regularly carry firearms and install security cameras at home. Looking back, it is obvious that Tommy's second significant loss had a profound impact on him. Following the murder of his sister in 1979, and now nearly 40 years later, his daughter vanished. In addition, Tommy confided in his wife Sherry that he thought someone was following him. People who knew Tommy well understood his fear of something bad happening to him or his family, especially during the holidays. As the year came to a close, the Bollards filed the legal motion to keep Brooks in the area. They'd also started a lengthy legal battle over religious custody that would last for years to come. Admittedly, the Nelson County Sheriff formally declared Crystal Rogers to be most likely dead on October 16, 2015. He identified Brooks Hawk, her boyfriend, as the main person to blame for her disappearance. The first arrest in connection with Crystal Rogers' disappearance was made public in December 2015. Danny Singleton, a seasoned worker who was regarded as Brooks Hawk's right-hand man, was placed under arrest. Singleton had worked with Crystal and was rumored to be friendly with her. Due to his grand jury testimony earlier in the year, 53-year-old Singleton was arrested on December 16, 2015, on 38 counts of perjury. He was accused by detectives of lying under oath numerous times, and if found guilty, he might receive a long prison sentence. Nevertheless, he was only in prison for 8 months before being released. In 2016, the primary suspect, Brooks Hawk, became the center of attention for the Crystal Rogers investigation. The detectives now focused on other family members after expanding their investigation to include his brother Nick. Attention was drawn to a white Buick that had belonged to their grandmother and a Whitesides. It was touted to a Kentucky State Police lab for forensic testing because Nick had sold it around the time Crystal vanished. The objective was to locate any evidence such as DNA or questionable bodily fluids connected to Crystal. Anna Whitesides, 82, became the focus of the investigation as a result. In June of 2016, she received a grand jury summons to testify. The car may have been used to dispose of a body, cleaned up after, and then sold to obstruct the investigation. The court surmised. Whitesides, however, exercised her Fifth Amendment right and declined to testify. Even though she avoided the grand jury, her property was investigated in August 2016 when Nick Hawk's house was searched and Brooks' mother Rosemary Hawk's farm was also searched. Detective John Snow declared that a thorough search spanning 245 acres, involving more than 30 officials and 18 cadaver dogs, was underway. The extensive search effort and cooperation with multiple law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, did not result in any concrete evidence pertaining to Crystal. The Ballard family was on the verge of yet another tragedy, so the investigation went on. On November 19, 2016, Tommy Ballard, Crystal's father, tragically passed away. At 8:00 a.m., the incident happened while he was out hunting on the family's land near the Bluegrass Parkway along Ed Brent Lane with his son and 12-year-old grandson. Although the police initially classified it as a hunting accident, Tommy's wife, Sherry Ballard, insisted it was not. Her husband had been murdered, she thought. Tommy's father, Till Ballard, disclosed Tommy's steadfast determination to locate Crystal. Tommy Ballard was shot in the chest, with the bullet exiting his back, according to a Louisville autopsy. Till Ballard added that his son intended to conduct a thorough search outside of the town during the upcoming week. Trooper Gregory, a police detective, stressed that it was far too early to make any inferences regarding a possible link between Tommy Ballard's death and Crystal Rogers' disappearance. Trooper Gregory then called for prayers and support for the bereaved family, who had already been through a great deal, as the investigation into Tommy's shooting got underway. Sherry Ballard, Crystal's mother, persisted in her legal dispute over Eli's custody. A Nelson County Circuit judge decided in February 2019 that Sherry was not allowed to see Eli until the custody dispute was settled. Even though the investigation was still fruitless, the Ballard family remained optimistic that they would soon receive answers. When the FBI got involved in the Crystal Rogers case in August 2020, they searched the homes of Brooke and Nick, the Crystal storage unit, and the Hawk family farm. Following Crystal's disappearance, Brooks's construction company built houses in the Woodland Springs subdivision. On August 27, 2021, a subsequent surge there resulted in the recovery of an item of interest from under a driveway. The FBI asked anyone in Bardstown who knew anything to come forward. In October 2022, the Halk family farm was the subject of a second, multi-day search as part of the investigation. The evidence gathered was sent to the FBI lab in Quantico for analysis. The FBI's involvement demonstrated the ongoing efforts to find the truth in a case that had left Crystal's family feeling confused and in need of explanations. By filing charges against a person who had not been identified before, authorities in the investigation into Crystal Rogers' disappearance made a significant advancement on June 21, 2023. This new information brought a depth to the long-running investigation that had first highlighted Brooks House as potential suspect in Rogers. The arrest also led to an investigation into a 2015 police interview with Brooks Hawk, during which an additional person named Stephen Lawson was mentioned. There are rumors circulating that Stephen Lawson is related to someone by the name of Joseph Lawson, which could explain the possible connection and add another level of entry to the ongoing investigation. According to court records, 32-year-old Joseph Lawson is accused of conspiring to commit murder and participating in the tampering of physical evidence. Lawson was charged in connection with an incident that occurred over the July 4th weekend in 2015, which also happened to be the time that Rogers was reported missing. During this critical time, Rogers' possessions, including her phone, purse, and keys, were found inside her vehicle on the Bluegrass Parkway. Lawson was specifically charged in the indictment with participating in the destruction, mutilation, concealment, or removal of tangible evidence. Joseph Lawson's arrest raised concerns about the circumstances surrounding Crystal Rogers' disappearance and the nature of Lawson's relationship to the woman who went missing. The details of what happened the night of Rogers' disappearance are still unknown, even after Lawson was arrested, creating holes in the story. On September 27, 2023, Brooks William Halk was taken into custody based on a one-page indictment that included accusations of murder and tampering with tangible evidence related to Crystal Rogers' death in July 2015. According to the unsealed indictment that a circuit court judge unveiled on Wednesday, Brooks was charged with killing Rogers on July 3rd or July 4th, 2015. The document does not, however, contain important information about the manner and location of her death. In a similar vein, Hawk's purported tampering with case-related evidence was not explained in the indictment. Federal Bureau of Investigation spokesperson Timothy Beam, who is located in Louisville, verified that Brooks was arrested early on Wednesday in Bardstown. The FBI reports that the arrest was made at a worksite without any problems. After being apprehended, Brooks was placed under arrest and placed under a substantial $10 million cash bond at the Nelson County Jail. Additionally, a judge issued an order barring him from communicating in any way with Crystal's family. Brooks was officially charged with Crystal's death at his first Bardstown arraignment on October 5th, following his arrest on September 27th. During the hearing, Special Prosecutor Shane Young stated that they had possession of the gun used to kill Tommy Ballard, which had been purchased from Mick Halk. He also suggested a link between the two homicides. On the other hand, Halk's attorney asked that his sizable $10 million bond be lowered to $500,000 with GPS monitoring. As Brooks awaited his trial for Crystal's murder, the Nelson County judge decided to uphold the initial bond amount. In addition, Elijah's grandmothers, Rosemary Halk and Sherry Ballard, engaged in a separate legal battle over custody of their grandson at the same time. Rosemary Halk has rescinded her custody request following Brooks Halk's arrest. Sherry Ballard and her family, along with Crystal's 5 children, expressed their happiness at the arrest. Residents of Bardstown expressed similar feelings regarding the arrest in the Crystal Rogers case. It is evident that the arrest of Brooks Hawk evoked a variety of feelings in both the Bardstown community at large and among those directly involved in the case. Kentucky as a whole, as well as the local community, were greatly impacted by the Crystal Rogers disappearance investigation. Over time, the case engulfed the area, resulting in a great deal of publicity, a lot of interviews, and thorough searches. It seems that the case may have finally found closure after 8 years of agonizing uncertainty. 10 days prior to his disappearance on October 22, 1989, the last known video footage of 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling was captured. This is going to be one of the biggest missing person searches in American history. Last night, while riding his bike with 2 other boys, Jacob Wetterling was kidnapped and held at gunpoint. The FBI believes there may be more evidence that the kidnapper of Jacob Wetterling may have struck in the past. Jared Shiro was kidnapped and assaulted just 6 days before his 13th birthday in 1989, only 10 miles from Jacob's abduction location. A number of attacks on other young boys in Minnesota, including Jacob Wetterling, will be solved thanks to him decades later, in addition to his own case. In St. Joseph, Minnesota, 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling resides with his parents, Patty and Jerry, as well as his 3 siblings, Trevor, Amy, and Carmen. On October 22nd, 1989, a cool but not too cold October morning, Jacob and Jerry went fishing before returning in time for the Vikings game to kick off at noon. Watching Vikings football was somewhat of a family ritual. That evening, Jacob's parents traveled about 25 minutes to a friend's house for a dinner party. They had arranged for the kids to stay at home during their absence, as they intended to return later that evening. Dinner had just begun for them. Trevor calls Patty and asks if he, Jacob, Aaron, and the others can ride their bikes to the neighborhood convenience store and rent a movie. The kids keep asking, but Patty says no, find something to do. We have got plenty to do. It was beginning to get dark outside. As long as they brought flashlights and returned home immediately after, they were able to persuade Patty and Jerry to allow them to go shopping with their friend Aaron. Given that St. Joseph is typically a very calm place, the Wetterlings believe the kids will be all right as long as they keep an eye out for cars. Jerry answered the phone when it rang, which was about 45 minutes later. "You have to leave that party right now and come home," called their next-door neighbor. When Patty inquired as to whether the children had returned, he said, "Someone took Jacob." After witnessing something terrible, Patty and Jerry are appalled and run home to find Trevor and Aaron in a state of shock. Trevor was simply agitated, and Aaron was hiding in the corner, biting his nails and wanting to disappear. Tearfully, the children describe what transpired. Jacob, Trevor, and Aaron got on their bikes and rode home after purchasing a movie from the store. Aaron, however, abruptly became aware of a noise coming from the roadside. He felt something like a shiver run down his spine, and he saw what appeared to be a gun flash. The children were forced to get off their bikes and into a ditch by a man wearing a mask and brandishing a gun. They initially believed it to be a high school student pulling a practical joke, but they soon discovered the man was truly terrifying. If they did not lay down in the grass and put out their flashlights, he threatened to shoot them. They did as he instructed. He asked Trevor, Aaron, and Jacob to all look at him and tell him how old they were. Trevor was given the order to flee the woods as quickly as possible, or else he would shoot. Trevor was gone in 10 seconds, and he did the same thing with Aaron before telling him to run. Trevor and Aaron ran as fast as they could, knowing the man could decide to shoot them at any time. They turned around, hoping to see Jacob following them, but both Jacob and the attacker had vanished. In a panic, Trevor and Aaron returned home to seek assistance. They made their way to safety, but they were unaware of Jacob's whereabouts or the man's intentions toward him. The Wetterlings are heartbroken and in need of information regarding their son's whereabouts and his captor after hearing Trevor and Aaron's account. Trevor and Aaron provide as much information as they can regarding their assailant. One of the most extensive missing person searches in American history is launched in an attempt to find Jacob. Days go by and no one is able to locate him. However, the Wetterlings may have their best chance of finding him in the form of Jared Sherrill, a young victim. 9 months prior to Jacob's disappearance, on January 13, 1989, 12-year-old Jared Sherrill was content with his family's life in Cold Spring, Minnesota, a small town located just 10 miles away from the Wetterlings. He and his friends went ice skating that evening. They then purchased malts from a cafe. What had seemed like a normal night soon turned gloomy. Jared approached his friend Corey as the boys prepared to leave for home. They strolled through the small alleyway in the backyard before Jared asked Corey to walk him home, but Corey turned him down. Jared bid farewell and set out on his lonesome walk home. However, his family became anxious when he failed to return on schedule. Nobody knew where Jared was, but his parents saw him running up to the house, upset, almost 2 hours after he said goodbye to his friends. He immediately claimed that he had been attacked and that the attacker was still at large. In order to have any chance of apprehending the man who had injured him, had to relive this horrific experience after his parents had called the police. Jared probably started walking home at 9 o'clock or 9:30 p.m. A car pulled up to him and asked where it should go. He proceeded to direct the man. Grabbing Jared, the man asked him to get into the car after getting out of the vehicle. He declared that he is not scared to use his gun. Jared obeyed the man's instructions and made every effort to live. In an attempt to flee and utilize the information to help apprehend his assailant in the future, he examined the car as much as he could. He saw that the car had a police scanner in it. Jared remained alert, following their every move, even though the man forced him to put his hat over his eyes and lie down in the back seat. The man drove for approximately 15 minutes before turning onto a gravel road and coming to a stop. Fear took hold of Jared as the man walked toward him. The 12-year-old was then molested in the vehicle. When it was all over, Jared was scared and unsure of what the assailant would do to him next. To his surprise, however, the man drove him back to Cold Spring, which is roughly 2 miles away from the share of residence. Returning Jared's snowsuit, he took some of Jared's other clothing, and before letting Jared go, he threatened him. He assured him that while discussing it with others was acceptable, he would track him down and murder him if they managed to uncover his identity. He threatened to shoot Jared if he turned around, so he told him to run. Desperate to escape, Jared ran back home. It is Jared's responsibility to explain what transpired after experiencing an unfathomable attack at such a young age. In an attempt to aid the authorities in apprehending this monster, he provides them with every detail he can recall regarding the car and the man who attacked him. Tells them about the police scanner in the car and claims to have been dressed in camouflage. He even gives them directions on the path they took by car. 3 days following Jared's kidnapping, authorities discover a potential culprit. Danny Heinrich, an ex-National Guard member, he has already had burglaries and other run-ins with the law, along with a few detours. He also had a police scanner in his car, which an officer discovered during a traffic stop, exactly like Jared had said. Jared recognizes 2 men in a picture lineup who he believes resemble his assailant. Heinrich was one of them. He is unable to identify a single suspect, and the police are unable to press charges. Jared has to go home because he knows the man who attacked him and threatened to kill him is still out there. Jared initially thinks he is the only victim of the man. He soon discovers there are similarities between the abduction of himself and Jacob Wetterling, which took place in the neighboring town of St. Joseph later that year. Jared thinks he might be the same person, so he wants to do everything in his power to apprehend the offender and help find Jacob. On December 13, 1989, nearly 2 months after Jacob Wetterling vanished, Jared Sherrill collaborates with FBI agents to create a drawing of the attacker. After noticing parallels between Danny Heinrich and the sketch, the FBI brings Heinrich in for questioning 3 days later. They inquire as to his whereabouts on the evenings of the kidnappings of Jacob and Jared. He consents to give them his shoes, a sample of his hair, and his car's tires since he has no other explanation. The resemblance between the tire and shoe prints found at Jacob's kidnapping scene aids law enforcement in obtaining a search warrant. They discover radio scanners, black boots, camouflage pants, and even pictures of young boys inside Heinrich's home. The police, however, allow him to keep the pictures and depart. Almost a year after Jared was attacked, on February 9, 1990, the FBI compares a snowsuit fiber sample with one from Danny Heinrich's vehicle. Based on solid evidence, he is being held for the kidnapping and sexual assault of Jared. FBI profilers assist in organizing the questioning. In an attempt to scare Heinrich and give the impression that they have a ton of evidence, they even cram documents into folders and write his name on them. But the truth is, they require his confession. He is detained in jail for the night, but he refuses to admit anything. The county attorney determines that they must release him because there is insufficient evidence to bring any charges against him, though they are still unable to provide any solid evidence. Suspicion grows and Jacob's family is determined to find him no matter what. Patty has persistently endeavored to maintain Jacob's public persona. She expressed her desire to never have to look Jacob in the eye and explained that she wanted to continue but got tired or that the process was taking too long. She vowed never to give up. Meanwhile, Jared is under increasing pressure. He is determined to provide answers and make the connection between his case and Jacob's. He is frequently pulled out of class by police. Furthermore, despite their best efforts to hide his identity, word quickly got out in the small town that he was the boy who had been molested. Even though he does not know who did it, he is continuously questioned and pressured by the police to confirm it. During one specific interview, the parents were not permitted to enter the room. He was quizzed on his level of certainty regarding the details after being thoroughly briefed on all the pertinent information. did not have the answers as much as he wanted to give them in depth. When he eventually started crying, his parents noticed and told the police they were through. In an effort to assist Jared in moving on and regaining his sense of normalcy as a child, his family chooses to leave Cold Spring. They wish to shield him from the mounting strain as well as the assailant, who is still at large. In an attempt to live a more tranquil life, they relocate to Painesville, Minnesota, a short distance away. However, Jared and his family will not learn about the horrors that are already occurring there for more than 20 years. The abduction of Jacob Wetterling and the case of Jared Sherrill have remained unresolved for years. Finding Jacob and apprehending the person who took him seem to be out of the question. However, a discovery made by a blogger more than 20 years after the kidnappings will alter everything. Around 2013, Jared receives a message from Joy Baker. In Painesville, Minnesota, the town Jared and his family moved to after his assault in Cold Spring, only about 20 miles away. She came upon a newspaper article about a string of unsolved kidnappings and assaults of small boys. Multiple reports of a man terrorizing young children in Painesville began in 1986, 3 years prior to the attacks by Jared and Jacob. He would follow children as they strolled or rode their bikes through the town. After grabbing them and asking their age, would attack them and then release them. It never occurred to the police to apprehend the man or identify him. However, Joy Baker believes there may be a link between those attacks and the kidnappings of Jared and Jacob. Jared is taken aback when Joy speaks to him. He has never heard of these other cases in Painesville before. They sound a lot like his kidnapping to Joy and Jared, and not even the FBI agents had made the connection between the two cases. Jared had believed for decades that he was the only survivor, so when he found out there were others as well, he set out to investigate further. He might be the link that the police need to locate Jacob and bring the attackers, all the young boys and their families, to justice. Jared and Joy carry out more research over the course of the following few years. After many hours of investigation, Jared locates and gets in touch with other survivors. He spoke with one of the victims during the first week and only learned the specifics of his attack. They were at ease conversing with him. They knew who he was, and it had a cascading effect. Ultimately, following the completion of Jared and Joy's work, detectives re-examined Jared's and the Painesville cases. Danny Heinrich, an early suspect who resided in Painesville at the time, provided the authorities with a hair sample. Thanks to technological developments, detectives can now compare the DNA from Heinrich's hair sample and the clothing Jared wore the night of his attack. There is a match. Police now have concrete evidence that Heinrich is the one who attacked Jared, but Jared discovers that he will be unable to charge him with the crime. There are statutes of limitations in Jared's case, and Heinrich is immune from prosecution. That gave Jared the impression that he had worked hard to discover the solution and that, having done so, Heinrich would not face legal consequences. It was unjust to him. Even though Jared's case is not strong enough to convict Heinrich, he still wants to support the other families in need of clarification. Joy and Jared's efforts have allowed police to look into Jacob's disappearance more thoroughly. They obtain a warrant to search Heinrich's residence. They discover child pornographic binders, but no proof of Jacob or the Painesville attacks. April Heinrich is taken into custody on charges of child pornography on July 28, 2015. Even though investigators think he took Jacob, they have not found any solid evidence yet. If Heinrich does not come clean, they might never find out where Jacob is or what happened to him. In their desperation to find the answers, they devise an astonishing bargain for him. In his case, he will not face any charges if he reveals to them where Jacob is. Additionally, all but one of the child pornography charges will be dropped. According to U.S. Attorney Andrew Lugar, it is the only way to discover the truth. Additionally, the Wetterlings consent to present Heinrich with the offer. Heinrich accepts the arrangement. After just 10 minutes in court, the prosecutor asks, "Did you kidnap, sexually assault, and kill Jacob Wetterling?" To which he calmly replies, "Yes, I did," and proceeds to describe what transpired when he took Jacob. Heinrich believed that following the assault, he saw a police car in the area. He shot Jacob out of panic. In addition, he admits to kidnapping and sexually abusing Jared. He takes the police to a location just outside of Painesville's downtown, where he buried Jacob's body. Danny Heinrich's plea agreement prevents him from being charged with Jacob's murder. However, he was given a 20-year prison sentence in 2016 for using child pornography. When leaves, he will be in his 70s. The awful truth of Jacob's death has now set in. When the families learn the truth about what actually transpired almost 30 years ago, Patty Wetterling claims they almost experience a sense of peace, knowing that Jacob is not in pain. "I want to say, Jacob, I am so sorry," Patty said. "It hurts so much to know what his final days, hours, and minutes were." In order to assist families of missing children, Jacob's parents founded the Jacob Wetterling Foundation, which is currently known as the Jacob Wetterling Resource Center. Additionally, they try to pass the Jacob Wetterling Act, which mandates the creation of sex offender registries in each state. In addition to her role as chair of the board for the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Patty Wetterling is a well-known advocate who never stops working to defend children and support other families. Had Jared Sherrill not shared his account and collaborated with Joy Baker to secure justice, the Wetterling family might not have been aware of Jacob's fate. The Wetterlings are still close to Jared and Joy today. They were instrumental in providing closure for many families that had been at odds for many years. The speed at which the internet has grown and how it has impacted our lives as we know it is truly unbelievable. Amongst the millions of users was Ashlyn Black, a fashion and outdoor-loving 25-year-old who enjoyed vintage shops, camping, and listening to Nirvana. She lived in Layton, Utah in the United States, and worked as a carer looking after young children that faced developmental or educational challenges. Her family said that she loved being a voice for those that might have found it harder to speak out for themselves, and the job just came naturally to her. Ashlyn couldn't wait to be a mother herself. Her family said it was something she wanted with all her heart. Her plan was always to adopt, a decision that was definitely impacted by her job as a carer, everyone said. She was kind, patient, and welcoming with a big infectious laugh that people said made everyone instantly feel comfortable around her. On May 23, 2020, Ashlyn, like many, was scrolling and swiping through Tinder. Before long, she matched with a 24-year-old called Ethan Hunsaker, a father of one who had recently separated from his wife and was now renting a house alone. The pair started talking and got along well, quickly making plans to go out for dinner and drinks that night. At around 9 p.m., Ethan drove over to Ashlyn's home to pick her up. The pair headed out to a local bar, where they stayed for about 4 hours before heading back to Ethan's house. Several hours later, through 19 a.m., the person that had made the call was Ashlyn's date, Ethan. But on the phone he said he didn't even know Ashlyn, didn't know her last name, and that he would like the officers to kill him when they arrived at the house. Police rushed to the property on North Reed Avenue. Ashlyn was face down in one of the bedrooms, with stab wounds across her whole body. Paramedics did everything they could to try and save her, but it was no good. Ashlyn Black was pronounced dead at the scene. Ethan had marks and scratches all over his body, and it was clear from the second police walked in that he was responsible. Ethan said that the pair had come back after their evening out and slept together before falling asleep. He said he woke up and saw Ashlyn sleeping on his arm. Out of nowhere, he started choking her as hard as he could for about a minute, as Ashlyn tried to fight him off. As she lay half-conscious on the floor, Ethan grabbed a knife from the kitchen, knelt over her, and started stabbing her. He said he watched her bleed out for about 10 minutes before calling 911. Despite his confession, officers couldn't make sense of how this had all come to be. According to Ethan, the date went well and they were really getting on. There had been no fight or argument that had got out of control. One minute they were sleeping, the next Ashlyn was dead. But Ethan soon bluntly said that he had invited Ashlyn over with the sole intention of killing her. He said he knew when he picked her up that night that if she came back to his house, he would take her life. He was calm and vacant as they arrested him and was taken into custody where he was held without bail. To everybody's surprise, he soon pleaded not guilty to Ashlyn's murder. As word started to spread about what had happened for those that knew Ethan, while some were shocked, others not so much. Ethan Hunsaker had worked for a concrete company for a short while, and his manager said that his outgoing personality meant he was soon working one-on-one with clients. But other co-workers said that something seemed to be off. His behavior had changed drastically since he split from his ex-wife, and he became withdrawn, soon arriving to work late, before not even turning up at all. After a couple of months, Ethan was fired after having an altercation with a female coworker, the details of which remain unconfirmed. People said he made a lot of dark and sinister comments and spoke about wanting to hurt and kidnap women. He also spoke of having suicidal feelings and homicidal thoughts as well. Ethan's boss said he was kind of the goofy young kid that always made us laugh, I guess, that always had something stupid to say. Then, end of last year, it was just weird. He went from goofy to just nobody wanted to be around him. He added that what he had been arrested for didn't actually surprise him. A woman named Autumn came forward with her own story to tell as well. She said she had been bombarded with texts and messages via social media from Ethan, right up until just a week before Ashlyn was killed. The pair had met through an old job and had known each other for about 11 years. Said everything started off very friendly and the pair would hang out on their lunch breaks. She stated she had no romantic interest in him and had never given him any reason to believe they were more than just friends. But in 2019, Ethan had started asking her out. Autumn would make excuse after excuse and soon started completely ignoring him. But he would find other ways to message her on different platforms. Liz Solis, the spokesperson for the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition, highlighted the fact that a lot of people on social media were placing the blame on Ashlyn as opposed to Ethan. She said, "This is in no way the victim's fault, and it's important to remind people of that. It doesn't matter how the victim met the perpetrator or where or when. The decision to commit the violent act was that of the perpetrator." Just over 1 year later, June 2021. To the relief of Ashlyn's family and despite the prosecution refusing to offer a plea deal, Ethan Hunsaker changed his not guilty plea. He finally pleaded guilty to murder and also pleaded to being mentally unwell. His lawyers requested that his mental health be taken into consideration upon his sentencing. Several doctors conducted evaluations and Ethan was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, recurrent psychotic features, generalized anxiety disorder, and severe alcohol use disorder. The judge said his mental health at the time of Ashlyn's murder was not a factor, but agreed he would factor in his current status, and this left him with a few options when sentencing him. One was to send him straight to prison. Another was to commit him to the state hospital for 18 months before being transferred to prison, or to send him to the Utah State Hospital, with no time limit for treatment. In February 2022, a judge sentenced Ethan Hunsaker to 15 years to life for murder. But before he began his time in prison, he would receive 18 months of treatment in the Utah State Hospital. The judge said that he hoped Ethan would get the help he needed, but added this was not the primary reason he was agreeing to the treatment. He said he was actually concerned for other inmates and officers in prison, worrying that Ethan might hurt more people and this move might offer people more protection. Ashlyn's mother said they felt that the court had not been courteous to their family's needs and feelings, whilst making sure they provided accommodations to the person that had cruelly taken Ashlyn away from them, something the judge apologized for, stating that the court's hands were tied in many ways. Ashlyn's family said it was as senseless a crime as it was evil. "Our hearts are broken and our lives are forever changed due to the despicable acts of another person. The life of an amazing, fun-loving young woman was taken, one who had a passion for being the voice of those who could not speak out for themselves. The lives of her friends and family are permanently altered." In court, Ashlyn's sister said, she tried her best to do good things in this world. And it is so clear that Ashlyn Black was already making such an impact on so many people and so many young lives. It is important that we remember her for the compassionate, selfless, kind-hearted 25-year-old she was. Her father said that his daughter always had a special talent for being late to everything, but he said he would give up anything to be sat waiting for her if it meant she would walk back through the door to see him. Some of the names in this case have been changed due to the individuals being minors. Brett Taylor Whitner was born June 1, 1997, who lived with his parents Donna and David Whitner and two siblings Tyler and Tyra in Covington, Louisiana. He was described as intelligent, sociable, caring, and fun-loving. On February 24, 2012, Brett, who was now a 14-year-old freshman at Covington High School, had gotten permission to go to a movie and spend the night at a friend's house. However, on that Friday night, 8 teens piled into a vehicle along with 2 adults to commute 45 minutes for a co-ed sleepover party at the home of Rodney Griffith and his girlfriend April Gailey. Brett's mother did not know this couple and only knew one of the teens. April, the homeowner's girlfriend, later said that when her daughter asked if all the kids could stay at her house, she said yes, but they needed to call their parents. The home was located on Louisiana 439 in Franklin, Louisiana. Brett's parents were unaware that Rodney and April were taking their child anywhere because Brett never called for permission like April had requested. As a matter of fact, most of the kids didn't ask for permission that night. Therefore, they were either not told to call their parents or they lied and said that they did. Rodney and April went to bed around midnight, leaving 2 guns by their back door, a .22 caliber rifle and a 20-gauge shotgun. The girls were supposed to sleep out in the camper and the boys in the home. During the testimony given, one kid said Brett kissed another of the boys' girlfriends, who I will call Tommy. Tommy picked up one of the guns by the kitchen door and Brett picked up the other gun, which was a .22 caliber lever-action rifle. At this point, another boy and girl were in the room at the time, who I will call Sarah and Jet. Sarah supposedly turned her head and didn't see what happened after this point. Jet said that he saw Tommy put his gun down and walk away. The next thing the 3 of them knew was that they heard a noise and then Brett fell to the floor. Jet felt something hit his foot, which turned out to be a spent bullet casing. Jet said he picked up the casing and threw it at Brett's head and told him to get up and stop playing, and then he saw the blood and realized it was not a joke. It is of note that later another spent bullet casing was found inside the chamber of the rifle. April, the adult female in the home, then called 911. The 911 call that April made can be heard using the link in the description. The 911 call came in at 6:36 a.m., but the shooting happened at 6 a.m. according to the people in the house at the time. Brett's mother believes that they all took this time to get their story straight before calling. During the 911 call, the caller sounds calm and the kid in the background answering questions sounds very calm as well. Strangely, when April made the 911 call, she stated that the kids came banging on her door to wake her up to tell her that something happened. However, the home they were in is very small, and one would think that a gunshot could be easily heard. She told the 911 dispatcher that the boy shot himself. Rodney, the owner of the home, was a reserve Washington Parish Sheriff's deputy at the time. He was also the owner of the guns and was apparently not questioned after the incident. He was allowed to stay in the home during the investigation while the others went to the police station to give their testimonies. The police said he even moved the gun because Brett was lying on it and put it up against the wall. When emergency services arrived minutes later, Brett was still breathing and moaning. They noted that no one seemed upset or were crying, and it appeared that someone had taken control of the situation and all the children were sitting in one room emotionless. While at the police station, a recorded statement shows that April, when asked by the investigator how she became aware of the shooting, blurted out that the kids pounded on her door and said, "Miss April, Tommy shot him." She then quickly changes that to, not Tommy, he shot himself." Incredibly, the investigators let that statement pass without comment. After arriving at the hospital, Brett's parents were informed by the neurosurgeon that he disagreed with the sheriff deputy's assertion that the shooting was self-inflicted. He said that with the entry angle and projection of the bullet, there is no way Brett could have pulled the trigger even if he was a contortionist. According to his mother, she begged to have his hands tested for gunshot residue, but authorities refused. The guns were also not fingerprinted. Sadly, Brett passed away 2 days later after he was taken off life support and his organs were donated to help others. Strangely, Brett's body was sent to a coroner 3 hours away, despite coroners being closer. The coroner that he was sent to documented that he was with the body on the 25th, but Brett wasn't taken off life support until the 27th. Also, about 2 years later, this same coroner claimed that 22-year-old Victor White committed suicide by shooting himself in the chest while his hands were handcuffed behind his back in 2014. The police determined that Brett inadvertently shot himself primarily based on statements collected at the scene. A Washington Parish grand jury declined to charge anyone in connection with his death, citing they did not see any evidence that anyone other than Brett was involved in his own death. According to the witnesses, Chief Criminal Deputy Scott Blair made repeated false claims. For example, Blair reported to the Daily News in Bogalusa that Brett shot himself in the temple, and he gave the Heat magazine an inaccurate gunpowder residue result. Vincent Molino, a senior piping designer in computer software and friend of the Whitner family, said by using the coroner's report measurements of the entry wound, a model of the victim, the size and centimeters of the .22 caliber rifle, and a computer drafting program, he recreated the incident in a 3D video model. The designer stated, "When I put the model of Donna's boy in the gun and the angle of trajectory of the wounds, it's not just 99% impossible, it is 100% impossible to be self-inflicted because the gun was in such a backward and upward parallel position behind him." The coroner issued a death certificate in May 2012. It said, "To the measurements of the reported weapon, this could be self-inflicted." Brett's mother, Donna, who is a drafting technician, did not find the report credible, and neither did Terry M. King, member of Concernment Citizens for St. Tammany, a local organization that champions transparent and good governance. Both St. Tammany and Washington parishes are under the auspices of the 22nd Judicial Court, its district attorney, Warren Montgomery, in the coroner's offices. Its former DA, Walter Reed, was convicted by a jury in federal court, New Orleans, in 2016 on 18 counts of political corruption, including mail fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and making false statements on his income tax returns. He was sentenced to 4 years, but requested release before 1 year due to the COVID-19 concerns. His brother was indicted in 2015 on kidnapping and sexual battery charges. Also, Jack Strain, one of the St. Tammany's parish's most powerful elected officials during 2 decades as sheriff, was recently found guilty and sentenced to life in prison for 8 sex crimes against boys, including 4 counts of aggravated rape, including incest. Also, Peter Galvin, the former Washington parish coroner, was placed in federal prison after he pleaded guilty to inappropriately spending public funds and resigned his position in October 2013. He was then sentenced in 2014 on federal charges after he pleaded guilty to taking money illegally from jail contracts with the city of Slidell. Also, this is not the same coroner involved in Brett's case, but he is part of the judicial circuit where Brett's death occurred and possible corruption. In 2012, Lee Dresselhaus, who is an investigator at a private investigation firm, completed an independent report and finding based on a review of the police reports, the pathologist report, crime scene photos, the first responders report, a crime lab result, and witness statements in Brett's death. Dresselhaus, who is a retired detective with over 20 years of law enforcement experience, said the police acted horrendously negligent. He said evidence was ignored, disregarded, or undiscovered. Witness statements contained numerous contradictions and outright falsehoods. He said 2 spent shell casings were found, yet only 1 bullet was accounted for, the bullet that killed Brett Whitner. Only one of the 8 kids that night was tested for gunshot residue. The result was listed as indeterminate. Dresselhaus said the facts support the conclusion that someone shot Brett either accidentally or with malice and that Brett was a victim of a potential homicide. In the exhaustive investigative report, he concluded, "This shooting did not occur the way the officially sanctioned police reports say it did." It is also my contention that the conclusions of the sheriff's office investigators, as well as the district attorney's office, that Brett Whitner shot himself behind his right ear with a .22 caliber Henry repeating rifle are in error. Donna said justice for her son's life was denied by the officials who covered up for the shooter, the homeowner and his girlfriend, her children and their families who have close familial and community ties to Washington Parish Sheriff's Office and the District Attorney's Office. She said, "In fact, the homeowner still works as a mailbox deputy sheriff at Washington Parish Sheriff's Office." Law enforcement officials had little or no desire to find out what truly happened at the sleepover party. She said, "We were re-victimized by those that swore to uphold the law," she added. A former sheriff deputy with the same sheriff's office, who requested his identity be withheld for fear of retaliation, said that when he was employed as a sheriff deputy during the time of the investigation, that he saw firsthand the nepotism, favoritism, and cover-up that exists there. Meanwhile, the witnesses have screenshot conversations about Brett's death on Facebook where kids were talking. However, authorities said they don't use those kinds of statements as evidence. His mother states that from time to time, police will drive by her home and shine their lights through her windows. His mother was interviewed on a podcast called The Transparency Project. Towards the end of the podcast, she describes all the injustices that have occurred and blames it on the good old boys helping the good old boys. His mother states that she believes she knows who shot her son and hopes that her son one day receives justice. But as of today, this case remains unsolved. O'Neal Moore was born April 23, 1931, and his case is one of the oldest cases in Louisiana and occurred during the peak of the civil rights movement. O'Neal was a major figure in the town of Varnedote, Louisiana. He was a U.S. Army veteran, a leader in his church, his Masonic Lodge, and the PDA. In 1965, he was 34 years old and married with 4 young daughters who idolized him. In 1964, O'Neal Moore and David Creed Rogers were the first African-American deputy sheriffs hired to work for the Washington Parish Sheriff's Office. While the job came with a lot of pride, it also worried his family endlessly, especially his mother. On June 2, 1965, exactly 1 year and 1 day into their employment, O'Neal and Creed spent the day patrolling together, and it was O'Neal's turn to drive. They were used to harassment, so they weren't surprised when a pickup truck began to tailgate them. The pair had just crossed the railroad tracks on Main Street in Barnado, headed to O'Neal's home, where his wife Mavella had their catfish supper ready. However, they diverted at the last minute to check out a brush fire. Moments later, men in a dark-colored 1954 Chevrolet pickup truck pulled up alongside their patrol car and opened fire. O'Neal lost control of the vehicle and crashed into an oak tree just at the end of the road where he lived, dying instantly from a gunshot wound. Creed was also shot but was able to radio in a description of the vehicle a dark-colored pickup truck with a Confederate flag decal on the front. Chief Deputy Sheriff Dula Holliday would arrive a few minutes later. He immediately began an intense investigation that would consume the next several months. As Creed was being taken away in an ambulance, he described the truck to Dole in precise detail. Using this description, Dole put an all-points billet out on the truck. Within 1 hour later, suspect and driver Ernest Ray McElveen, a known white supremacist, was arrested in Tylertown, Mississippi for O'Neal's murder. However, his $25,000 bail was paid, an airtight alibi supplied, and due to a lack of evidence, no charges were officially filed. Even with no charges, Chief Doyle Holliday continued to pursue his investigation. 2 weeks after the shooting, he and his family were sitting in the living room when shots were suddenly fired into their home. Doyle had his family get down on the floor and grabbed his gun and went outside. He fired at the assailant's car as they drove away from the home. He believes that he was attacked to try and scare him into stopping the investigation. However, he and the others involved in the investigation refused to back down. The FBI investigated the individuals who contributed to McElveen's bail, including the main contributor, Saxon Farmer, who provided over $10,000. Farmer was head of the Klan Bureau of Investigation for Washington Parish and the leader of the reported 5 Klan units in the parish. In 1965, Farmer refused to provide a statement to the FBI and continued to refuse until 1990 when he was subpoenaed to the grand jury. The FBI reopened their investigation in 1990, 2001, and again in 2009 under the Civil Rights Era Cold Case Initiative. However, there would still be no new charges filed against McElveen, nor the other 2 suspects authorities believed were involved in the shooting. The Deacons for Defense and Justice, an organization founded in 1964 to protect civil rights activists from the Ku Klux Klan, protected and supported the Moore family in the years that followed. Bogalusa was described as one of the worst areas during the civil rights movement. Soon after her husband, O'Neal's murder, Mavella had thought about getting her revenge by putting a pistol in her handbag and going to a whites-only day at the local fair. She had planned to wait for someone to say something to her about her husband, then retaliate. But nothing was said and the gun was never used. Author Stanley Nelson explores the case in his book, Clan of Devils, The Murder of a Black Louisiana Deputy Sheriff. Creed Rogers lost the use of one eye in the shooting, but was able to retire as captain for the Sheriff's Department in 1988 and died in 2007 at the age of 84. All 3 men got away with O'Neal's murder and went on to commit other crimes. And as of today, there has been no justice and this case technically remains unsolved. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the depths of unsolved mysteries. Cold cases not only challenge our understanding of the past, but also ignite our curiosity and determination for answers. Remember to subscribe to stay updated on our latest investigations. And if you have any information regarding the cases we've covered, don't hesitate to reach out. Together, we can shed light on the shadows of the past and bring closure to those who seek it. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and never stop seeking the truth.